Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mail Bag, the mailbag all-viewer question version of AMC Movie Talk here that we do on the weekends. My name's John Campia. I am the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News, and I am so glad that you decided to make us a part of your day. Thanks for joining me today. And as the title kind of suggests, AMC Mailbag, we don't go into movie news and all that kind of stuff so much. What we just do is we just take your questions. And you guys will kind of steer and guide the conversation today. And you can get your question on two different ways. One way you can get your question on is by emailing us. Now, you can email us 24/7, anytime. Send in your email questions to amcmovietalk@gmail.com. And then we draw from those email questions that we get to use on Mailbag. And we also use them on AMC Movie Talk Monday through Friday. Now, one of the other things we do, though, we leave the last part of the show for taking live questions from Twitter. So if you have a Twitter account, you can go onto Twitter and tweet to me at AMC Movie News. So tweet at AMC Movie News and send in your questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few questions from the live Twitter stream. As you can see, we got some people tweeting us already in there. And we'll get to that all in just a bit. So, yeah, the last part of the show, we're going to take your questions from the Twitter stream. Tweet to us at AMC Movie News. And you can email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. So, with all of that out of the way, let's dive into it. We got a bunch of stuff to cover today. So, the first question today is coming to us from Cameron Werner, who writes, Wreck-It Ralph is my all-time favorite movie. I never felt so good watching a movie. It's so good, by the way, Cameron. It's so good. Anyway, Sugar Rush reminded me of what GameCube game would be, which is my favorite gaming console. My question is this. There is no doubt a Wreck-It Ralph 2 will come, but I am concerned because I don't want them to mess up Wreck-It Ralph. Do you think they can accomplish what Toy Story did? Can Wreck-It Ralph accomplish what Toy Story accomplished? Well, there's a couple of ways to look at this. Number one, let's look at the first part of your question is you don't want them to mess it up. You're concerned because you don't want them to mess it up. Well, the same guy who directed the first Wreck-It Ralph is writing and directing the second Wreck-It Ralph. At least I believe he's writing it. He might give his direction to some other writer to write it, but he's directing it. So that's good. You'll probably have all the primary voice casts back. And basically the same people who made Wreck-It Ralph are going to make Wreck-It Ralph 2. So it's in the right hands. But understand this. Any movie can be messed up. I mean, it's not easy. Like a lot of film fans, and I say this all the time, a lot of film fans seem to have this fairy tale belief that making a good movie is easy. It's just easy. And it's not. It's impossibly hard. Like you get the most talented people in the world trying, and more often than not, movies are bad, and then sometimes they're good. And like even guys like Steven Spielberg, who I contend is the greatest director of all time, that's certainly up for debate, but that's just my opinion. But even Steven Spielberg had bad days in the office. Steven Spielberg, the same guy who gave us Amistad, and who gave us Lincoln, and who gave us Jaws, and who gave us E.T., and who gave us not Shawshank Redemption, Schindler's List, and who gave us, I mean, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Same guy. Also gave us Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Also gave us Terminal. I mean, so even Steven Spielberg will have bad days in the office, and he's the best there's ever been. So is it possible they could mess up a sequel? Absolutely, it's possible, because it's so hard to make a good movie in the first place. But remember, it's a lot like reboots. If they make a sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, and if it's bad, for whatever reason, we have no reason to believe it'll be bad. But if it is bad, oh well, we still got the greatness of the original. You know, no matter how bad Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is, Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we've still got the first three Indiana Jones films. They're still there. They're not affected in any way, and they're still brilliant, even though the fourth one was kind of a letdown. So is there some reason to be nervous? Well, sure, but no more than any reason you would have for any other movie coming out. That it might be good, it might be bad, you never know. But the more interesting part of your question, I thought, Cameron, was when you're asking, could it be another Toy Story? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. I don't think Wreck-It Ralph has the potential to be the next Toy Story, and here's why. Wreck-It Ralph, one of the reasons it's so good and so strong was it's just charming and fun. It certainly had scenes with a lot of heart. Like that one scene between Ralph and, I forget Sarah Silverman's character's name. Penelope Van Schweetz. Is that her name or is that the bad girl's name? I can't remember. But anyway, when he is having to wreck her car and her heart's breaking. I mean, that scene had a lot of heart. But for the most part, Wreck-It Ralph wasn't, a deep narrative with tons of heart all over the place. It was just delightful and charming and fun and funny, and that's what made it so entertaining. Toy Story, on the other hand, remember, this is just my opinion. Toy Story, on the other hand, was really crafted around its narrative and its humanization of these characters, despite the fact that they were toys, and the human emotion and drama going on. And all of that was covered in a veneer of a children's movie in a way. There's just something so special about Toy Story that I don't know it'll ever be touched that way. But even if I'm right, and who says I am, but even if I'm right about that, that doesn't take away from how special and how good and how fun Wreck-It Ralph is. And I am dying to see where they go with part 2. I'm actually starting to get a little bit antsy. I wanted to see a little bit of movement on it by now, and I'm not seeing a lot. But it'll come. It made them tons of money. The director wants to do it. Everybody involved wants to do it. Disney wants to do it. It's going to come. So let's hang in there. All right. The next question comes to us from Bryson Watson, sorry about that, who writes, how come Marvel only puts out 2 movies a year? I understand they cost a lot of money, but by now Disney should be handing Marvel blank checks. You're not an MBA, are you, Bryson? Anyway, I would put out at least 3 a year, at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. Spring, summer, winter, or fall, or winter/fall. It would shorten the time between Avengers movies and take away having to pick and choose what new characters are used. Well, Bryson, here's the thing. You're right. One of the short-term problems that Marvel doing 3 or 4 films a year would solve is they would be able to get out more of their characters. So, right now, there's been a lot of discussion. You know what? There's no room in Phase 3 for Doctor Strange and Black Panther, at least as far as standalone movies go. So who are they going to go with? Some people say Black Panther. Some people say Doctor Strange. By the way, there's this rumor going around that Doctor Strange has been confirmed, and it has not been confirmed. There is a report from a website run by some friends of mine that claims Doctor Strange is going to be the film. And so what we've known about Phase 3 so far, and I know I'm getting off track a little bit, what we know about Phase 3 and what we have known about Phase 3 and what is confirmed about Phase 3 is that we are getting Ant-Man. We are obviously getting Avengers 3. It's been confirmed we're getting Captain America 3. We're getting Thor 3, which leaves one more spot that they want to do. And that everybody's known for a long time. That's either going to be Doctor Strange or Black Panther. I mean, we've known that. So there's a report coming out that came out a couple of days ago that claims that it's going to be Doctor Strange. But once again, everybody started jumping all over that and saying, it's been confirmed. No, it hasn't. Something is confirmed when the studio says it. When the studio comes out, whether it's the director or the studio rep themselves, when the studio comes out and verifies something and says, yes, this is what's happening, then it's confirmed. When a website says we've got an anonymous source who's telling us this, it may be true. It very well could be true, but it's not confirmed until the studio says so. Remember, everybody's running around. It's confirmed. Johnny Depp is Doctor Strange. It's confirmed. And everybody's running around. I try to tell people, did the studio say this? Because if the studio didn't say it, then it's not confirmed. It's just some website reporting on it. As it turns out, it was debunked and it was false. And this one could very well be true because it's a 50-50 shot of being true. We've all known it's either going to be Doctor Strange or it's going to be Black Panther. So there's a report. So anyway, back to your question. Marvel doing 3 or maybe even 4 films here does solve that short-term problem about, oh, well, we got to choose between Doctor Strange and Black Panther and blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, it solves that short-term problem. But you're missing, I think, Bryson, I think you're missing the bigger picture here. First of all, the reason Disney has a lot of money is because they're not in the business of just writing blank checks. And they're not in the business of making movies that lose money. That's why the reason Disney has money is because they're not in the business of making films that lose money. And don't think for a second that Marvel is immune from having a bomb. They're not. Marvel is not immune from having a bomb. They are perfectly capable of having a bomb, and Disney is not in the business of producing bombs. And when they do, heads roll, people lose their jobs, and Disney readjusts. But they're not in the business of having bombs. So they're not going to write anybody blank checks. But the two bigger pieces that you have to keep in mind here is, it's not a matter of how much money it costs to produce 3 films a year, although that's part of it. That's part of it. Disney doesn't want to have too much of their money tied up in films coming out at any one given time. The bigger picture here is, it's just too much. Kevin Feige has his hands, he is one of these rare producers who is completely involved in every aspect of every Marvel film. Like a lot of people think Joss Whedon is the guy, spirit. No, it's Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige is the overall architect and mastermind behind everything that's gone on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And he picks great directors like Whedon to work with and things like that, and all the other directors who have done Marvel films. But Kevin Feige and his core team are directly involved in making all these films. And 3 films in a year is too much. It's just too much. I can't even believe, it's hard for me to believe a guy being that involved in 1 film per year. That's crazy. 5 films in 5 years. That's nuts. And yet, that's what Kevin Feige and his team are doing. But you can push it too much. Trying to get a team of people to oversee and be directly involved with and really architecting and spearheading and steering the ship for 3 movies a year? Unreasonable. You can't do it. I mean, I understand there are other people out there, like Steven Spielberg will slap his name on a movie as a producer on 50 films a year, but he doesn't really do anything on any of those films. He just allows his name to be put on it, maybe has lunch with the director one day and consults, and boom, brought to you by producer Steven Spielberg. And that's a little bit deceptive. Disney has a core team headed by Kevin Feige that oversees everything, and 3 films a year is just too much. Then if you say, oh, well, then get other people. Well, now you're diluting. Now you're diluting your talent pool. You're diluting the quality of your films. Now things are getting, Kevin Feige's having to hand entire projects off. I just don't think it's the right way to go. And the other big problem with the idea of doing 3 or 4 movies a year, and who knows, Marvel may get to the point where they do 3 a year. But the more films you put out a year, the more you run the risk of people getting tired of them. Leave them wanting more. I mean, a lot of you guys out there have had girlfriends, right? Where it's like you see your girlfriend like twice a week and they're always dying to see you more. Whereas if you hang out with them every day, maybe they're not so excited about seeing you every day. I mean, yeah, except for me, obviously. Women are always dying to see me. None of that is true, by the way. But you run the risk of getting people tired of you, of wearing off your novelty. Whereas you do 1 or 2 films a year, you make the fans wait 6 months in between films. It keeps the anticipation up. It builds up the excitement. And, they have a really nice rotation schedule. And I think eventually they'll do 3, but when they do make the jump to 3 films, which they're not going to do for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, but when they do eventually, they're running a risk of diluting the quality of their product and of making it a more rapid pace towards the fan base maybe getting bored of it. And you don't want that. You don't want to dilute the quality, and you don't want fans getting bored of it. You want to keep them in anticipation. So those are the bigger reasons why I don't think they should do 3 films a year. It's not a matter of money, although that's part of it. It's a matter of quality, and it's a matter of novelty, not wanting to wear off too fast. All right, let's move on to question number 3. And question number 3, and by the way, there's so like 500 of you guys are in the chat board already, chatting up. See, you guys are having some cool conversation. Anyway, okay, so let's get to the question here. Andrea Bell writes, "Hey AMC, I love your show." Thanks so much, Andrea. "This fangirl watches you every day. My question is, I have always loved fellow Canadian girl Emily Van Camp." Good Canadian girl, by the way. Born, I believe, in Port Perry, Ontario. Not too far from where I grew up. Anyway, Emily Van Camp, and was excited when it was announced she was joining the Marvel Universe. Similarly, I've always enjoyed the duty before love morals of the Captain America / Sharon Carter relationship. Have you heard anything, or do you have any ideas as to what Sharon Carter's role in Captain America 2 will be? Will she still be Peggy's relation? I'm worried that she hasn't been featured in the American trailers and very briefly in the UK trailer. Is she being overshadowed by Black Widow? Yes. Well, okay, let's start with this. Yeah, I believe they're still saying that she's going to be the niece from the character in the first film. And I think it's difficult to say what kind of a role she's going to have, because you're right, they haven't featured her much. And you know what? I think it's inevitable that she's going to be overshadowed by Black Widow. Because Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson, played so well by Scarlett Johansson, is a really major player in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, you know, we just heard comments from Kevin Feige recently that, man, he even wouldn't mind having a Black Widow solo film. I mean, he really likes Black Widow. And we know that Black Widow is going to play a really serious role, a major role in the upcoming Avengers film. So is Emily Van Camp's character going to be overshadowed by Scarlett Johansson's character? I think it's inevitable, yes, and that's probably by design. And I don't know if they're going to go into a romance relationship or anything like that. But, you know, if you watch any of the Marvel animated stuff, they allude to, you know, romance between Captain America and Black Widow. So I really don't know how major of a role she's going to play, that Emily's going to play in the film. I'm a little bit nervous that she'll maybe have just a couple scenes and be out. We'll have to see. You know, if it's only a couple of scenes, why do you get an actress like Emily Van Camp then? Not really sure. But if anything is clear, we've had a couple of trailers now, and we haven't really seen anything featured on Van Camp, much like we haven't seen, George St. Pierre, which I'm super excited to see George St. Pierre in this movie. For those of you who don't know, probably pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Former UFC welterweight champion, and another good Canadian boy, by the way. And we haven't seen him featured at all, so you know his role is going to be fairly small. Bartok the Leaper is going to have a small role in Captain America 2, and I have a feeling that so will Emily Van Camp. We'll have to wait and see, though. I don't know much more beyond that. All right, let's go into the next question. The next question comes to us from Christopher Noragat, who writes, "Hey AMC, my question is, who are your favorite CGI characters? My personal top 5 would be, number 1, Caesar from the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Gollum, Smaug, Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean, and Neytiri from Avatar." I like your list. That's a great list, actually, CG characters. You know what? This list and this question... You know, I still get in debates with people. I do not understand people who think they're sounding smart or think they're sounding purist, who will say, practical effects are always better than CGI. No, they're not. No, they're not. I mean, that sounds really old school and very, hipster and very cool of you to say, but it's just flat out not true. Practical effects are not always better than CGI. You're kind of sticking your head in the sand if you think that's the case. Now, there's always an argument of where's the line then? Where should the balance between practical and CGI? Though that's a good discussion to have. But there's still these people out there who goes, practical is always better than CGI. No, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, you think Caesar in the Planet of the Apes would have looked 1/10 as good if it was some guy in a suit? You think Gollum you think anybody would still be talking about Gollum in the Lord of the Rings films if it was just Andy Serkis just in makeup prancing around? I'll go, and Davy Jones, obviously, you're just going to have rubber snakes flapping around on his beard, rubber tentacles flapping around on his beard. That would look bad. Now, I would make my personal list would have a couple of changes. So I would probably take out Smaug, and I would take out Neytiri, and I would probably replace them with the Hulk from Avengers and Optimus Prime. So, I mean, that's my list. So my list would be in no particular order. My list would be Caesar, Gollum, Optimus Prime, Davy Jones, and Hulk would be my favorite CGI character. Now, once again, you know, practical's always better. Yeah, okay, yeah. Let's just get Lou Ferrigno in green body paint jumping around in the Avengers. Yeah, that would have been just as good. Totally would have been just as good. So anyway, that's just my thing. But once again, I'm not saying that practical effects are not sometimes the better choice. I think there's a great debate and discussion to be had about where should the line be. Should it be like 80-20, 60-40, 50-50, you know, between CGI or between practical effects? It always comes down to, it depends on the shot. What does this shot need? What does this scene need? And I like it when filmmakers don't govern themselves by a dogma and don't go, I like using 80% CGI and 20% practical. Well, that's great, but what if this scene really does call for practical effects? What if this scene is better and you're already over your 80-20, you know, ratio that you said you're going to stick to? Go scene by scene. Don't be governed by a dogma. See what works best for the shot and then go with that. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Question number 5 comes to us from Matthew Raspberry, who writes, hello, Campia and crew. Hello, Matthew. My question has to do with the impact of trailers. I recently watched the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Enemies Sizzler trailer. I thought it was fantastic, and the movie is now my most anticipated film of the year. Guardians of the Galaxy is a close second. I know this is a very broad question, and the answer is pretty obvious, but could you touch on the impact a good or bad trailer has on the success of a movie? Thank you for taking the time to read my email. No problem, Matthew. Well, I mean, on one hand, you're right. The answer is obvious. The trailer is the most significant, impactful, relevant thing about will an audience, potential audience member, go out to see that movie. Nothing will determine that more. You know, the premise of the film is a big thing, who's starring in it, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, the most influential thing over whether a person will see a movie or not is the trailer. Does it catch their attention? And you got 2 minutes, you know, sometimes 1:30, sometimes 2 minutes and 30 seconds to really convey the spirit of your film, what it's about, excite and entertain a person, intrigue them and draw them in. You got to do that all in roughly 2 minutes to get them hooked. And if a trailer's bad, you lost them. I mean, honestly, a lot of people, they see a bad first trailer and instantly they're lost. I still contend that Dread with Carl Urban that came out a couple years ago, that was a really good movie. That was really fun. But guess what? The first trailer, the public's first exposure to this new vision of Dread was awful. Awful, awful, awful trailer. I remember getting on the phone and talking with some friends of mine at AMC head office the day the first Dread trailer came out. I'm like, hey, did you see this piece of garbage? Can you believe Carl Urban would do something like this? Would be a part of something like this? Blah, blah, blah. Then I went to go see the movie because it was my job. And I loved it. It was awesome. So, I mean, but Dread financially failed. And I'm not saying if the first trailer had been a really good trailer that Dread would have made $100 million domestically. I'm not saying that, but it would have done better than it did. Because I believe that first trailer came out and it turned a lot of people off. And you lost them. They're gone. You remember, you know that old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression? Your trailer is the first impression. The trailer is the pickup line you give to the blonde at the bar on Saturday night. You blow that line, you're done. You hit with that line, you got a chance to, grabbing drinks together or something like that. It's so important. Now, this is why, though, I always encourage people, listen to film critics. Listen to film critics. A lot of people like to say, I don't listen to the critics because I'm so smart, whatever. The reason I tell people to listen to film critics, not just one film critic, I say read a bunch of film critics and see generally what people are saying. And read film critics that are all different from each other. Joe Blow has Jimmy O is a film critic there, right? Jimmy O, he's been on AMC Movie Talk. He's this, Rob Zombie looking dude. He's got his mohawk and whatever. He is a film critic, but he's a very different film critic from, say, like a James Rocky, who used to write for MSN Movies, and I believe he does some writing for The Hollywood Reporter. I have to double check that, but James Rocky is a very, very fashionable suit and tie, extraordinary Canadian gentleman. But they're two very different dudes, and so I tell people, look, listen to critics, get a bunch of critics together that you appreciate. Make sure that they're different from each other. So get a Jimmy. Don't get all mohawk wearing dudes. Don't get all suit wearing dudes. Mix it up. Get different perspectives and see what they generally say as a consensus. And the reason I tell people to do that is not because their opinions about movies are better than yours. Not at all. But the reason I say that is because you need to have a balance to offset the trailer. Because if all you do as a film fan, I want film fans to be more educated. And if all you do as a film fan is you just base it on the trailer, then what you are doing is you are giving 100% of your movie-going decisions to the studio. You're letting the studio dictate to you which movies you go to see. You're letting the people who stand to profit from you going to the movie being the only voice you listen to. And that's disbalanced. That's not balance. Look, it's like me saying I'm going to go out and buy a car. But the only person whose advice I will listen to is the president of Honda. And the president of Honda, he's the only guy whose advice I listen to about what car to buy. Well, guess what car he's going to tell me to buy? He's going to tell me to buy a Honda. And that's what it is with the trailers. The studio puts these trailers together to appeal to you the most. They're giving you their sales pitch. And so the reason I tell people, listen to critics, is not to let them make up your mind for you, but to be a counterbalance of people who don't stand to gain anything. Despite what some stupid people will accuse me and some other people of and saying, James Rocky said he liked that movie. He must have been paid off. That's a great fantasy fairy tale, but that's not what happens in the real world. Trust me, a lot of us wish that was the case, but it's not. Some people say, oh, no, there was this one case in 1985 when 1 in a million. But generally speaking, this big body of film critics, they don't stand to gain anything whether you go to see this movie or not. So let's talk about Dredd, right? So the critics come out, and like James Rocky and Jimmy O, okay? James Rocky and Jimmy O, they don't stand to gain a single thing if you do go to see that movie. They don't stand to gain a single thing if you don't go to see that movie. They're just going to give you what they think. And I think it's important, if we're going to listen to trailers, then we should also listen to other voices as well, just to balance it out a little bit, and then make your decision on what you think. So listen to the trailer, watch it, take it in, see what you think about it, but then listen to other voices of film critics who have seen the movie already, and then balance that out. And now that you got all that information, then make your decision if you think this is the right kind of movie for you. So I know that's a really long answer to your question about the influence of trailers, but yeah, it's like, once again, going back to the picking up somebody at the bar thing. Ladies, if a guy comes up to you and gives you a great opening line, that's great. But then if you have 3 other girls at the bar saying, this guy is a total jerk, he seems sweet and he seems slick, but he's a total jerk and treats women really badly, you got to balance that out. Like, you should listen to both voices. So that's just what I'm saying about that. Anyway, let me get on to the last question of the day. And the last mailbag question that we're taking today comes to us from Chris Snyder, who writes, greetings and salutations, everybody. Coming to you from Ohio. My question, would you like to see a Galaxy Quest sequel? I think it's a fantastic film. From what I understand, it did well both financially and critically. Why do you think they never did a sequel? You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because I think it was just 2 days ago. Anne was doing something with Kaori or something like that. And so I was sitting around and I was just flipping through Amazon Prime and I saw that Galaxy Quest was in there. And I'm like, and I put up on my Facebook, I'm like, how did I not know that Galaxy Quest is in Amazon Prime? I love Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest to me is freaking amazing. Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. I got to ban somebody from the chat board. But to me, Galaxy Quest is just, it's hilarious. It's witty. It had terrific comedic performances. I mean, it was just all kinds of awesome. Now, as to why it didn't get a sequel, I think there was a couple of things. When you had a movie that's critically successful, because a lot of people enjoyed him and loved it and all that kind of stuff, and it did make an all right amount of money. But here's the thing about Galaxy Quest. As much as I love it, and don't get me wrong, if they announce a Galaxy Quest 2 tomorrow, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to be so happy. That being said, one of the brilliant things about Galaxy Quest was the fact that it was, you know, this novelty about, you know, obviously it's a Star Trek parallel, and what happens when these actors from an 70s popular show are actually whisked into the real, you know, galactic conflict thing. That was the heart and the core of Galaxy Quest. But that's gone now. The novelty of that's done. So what do you do for Galaxy Quest 2? The aliens come back and say, we need your help again. And they go, all right, let's go. But now you've done that already. So while I would be completely thrilled and happy and jumping up and down if they announce a Galaxy Quest 2, at the same time, trying to be objective, I can say I can see why they haven't done one, because the novelty of that is gone. Where do you go really that you haven't already gone before? So that's kind of how I see it. Anyway, I've got a few minutes left here. I've got about 15 more minutes. So I said I was going to take some questions from the Twitter stream, and I am. So let's take some questions from the Twitter stream. We'll see what we got there. By the way, if I sound like a bumbling idiot, it's because I have not screened these questions. I'm just taking them live and see what we got. So let's jump over to the Twitter stream and see what we have. The first question, let's take it from Kyle Harris. And oh boy, it's a Dragon Ball Z question. Kyle Harris asks, what are the chances of a live-action adaptation of Dragon Ball Z within the next 10 to 15 years? Well, here's the thing. People get mad at me when I answer Dragon Ball Z questions, because I think Dragon Ball Z is stupid. I really do. I think it's really, really stupid. But that's just my opinion. Just because I think it's stupid doesn't mean you should think it's stupid, or in no way should it embellish or take away from your enjoyment of Dragon Ball Z. Just because I'm saying I think it's dumb doesn't mean you should think it's dumb by any means whatsoever. If you love it, awesome. I love people being fans. That's all that counts. But people keep asking me Dragon Ball Z questions as if I'm going to suddenly say something different. I think Dragon Ball Z is a dumb idea. I do not think studios will do it again. I think the best chance people have of seeing a live action Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z in any time in the near future will be if it's an Asian produced film. So if one comes out of Japan, I could see that happening, but I don't expect, and I could be totally wrong here, but I don't expect that you're going to see Paramount or 20th Century Fox or Universal or Disney or Lionsgate or Magnolia or anybody do a Dragon Ball Z movie, because it ain't as popular as Dragon Ball Z fans think it is, and it's pretty dumb. But again, that's just my opinion, and if you like it, you should still love it. Just because I say I think it's dumb doesn't mean you should think it's dumb. So there we go. All right, let's go back to the Twitter board. And the next question comes from, where was I? Marcos Lopez writes, could Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch be hinted... try this again. Could Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch be hinted as Inhumans? And could the Inhumans become the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of the X-Men? You know, that comes up a lot. I haven't heard any rumblings from Marvel or any of the reps at Marvel ever talk about Inhumans. That's not saying I don't think it could be a good idea or not. Not at all. But I'm just saying we've heard them talk a lot about Black Panther. We've heard them talk a lot about this guy and a lot about that guy. I've never heard anybody from Marvel talk about Inhumans, so I don't know that they are on their radar right now. So I doubt we're going to see any kind of suggestion about them yet. But who knows, right? I mean, you never know. They could just be keeping it a secret for now and doing a really good job of keeping it a secret. All right, let's try this again. From Joe O'Neill, he writes, Sorry, the thing keeps moving. I don't think Spider-Man has enough interesting hero villains to make the spin-off movies profitable. Venom, that's it. Well, Joe, obviously Sony disagrees, because for those of you who don't know, Sony's already announced they're creating their own Spider-Man cinematic universe. So they've got Spider-Man 2, 3, and 4 all in the works. Spider-Man 2 is obviously coming out here really soon. Then Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man 4 are all coming. And they've announced they're doing a Venom movie and a Sinister Six movie. So Sony fully believes they have enough to make it work. They believe they have a plan to introduce characters through Spider-Man 1, 2, 3, and 4, Sinister Six, and Venom. They believe they have enough movies that they can introduce us to other characters in the Spider-Man cinematic universe that they can then do more spin-off movies for. So obviously Sony believes they've got something they can work with there. And I do too. But it all depends on how they handle Spider-Man 2, 3, and 4. If they handle it right by peppering in and introducing us to some new characters that cinematic audiences haven't seen yet, and they get introduced in a very cool way, then Sony can really be onto something. Or they can blow it completely. I mean, I got a feeling it's going to be one or the other. I think they're going to do it brilliantly, or they're going to blow it completely. And I got to tell you, I'm one of the guys I'm really a big fan of the new Spider-Man. I'm a big fan of this Mark Webb, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man cinematic universe so far. I thought the first one was amazing. I love what I'm seeing from the second one so far. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm very excited by what I see. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for now. All right, let's move on to the next Twitter question. And the next Twitter question comes to us from Theo19, who writes, if Idris Elba wasn't Heimdall, do you think he could have been a great choice for Jon Stewart in the Green Lantern? I get this question all the time. It's difficult for me to answer. Okay, look, if they were making Jon Stewart as Green Lantern, would Idris Elba have been a good choice? Sure, he's a good actor. I like him a lot. He's a very good actor. And he's a big guy. He can do action. We've seen him do a lot of action in his career. For me, it always comes down to this, though. Green Lantern is not Jon Stewart. Green Lantern is not Guy Gardner. Green Lantern is not Kyle Rayner. That's not who Green Lantern is. That's not the quintessential Green Lantern. And so for me, the question kind of gets derailed a little bit because I don't think DC is going to use Jon Stewart as Green Lantern, as their Green Lantern, because you know what? It doesn't matter. After the death of Superman, it doesn't matter how many guys you had flying around with the Superman S on, whether it was Steel or the Cyborg or Superboy, whatever. None of them were Superman. Clark Kent is Superman. It's the same discussion I have about Batman Beyond a bit. Nobody cares. Nobody cares in the general movie-going audience about Batman Beyond. Why? Because Bruce Wayne is Batman. And I know a lot of people disagree with me. That's totally cool. I'm just telling you from my point of view and from, the experience I have talking to a lot of, average film fans who don't know anything about comic books or the short-lived cartoon series or whatever. But to me, Hal Jordan is Green Lantern. I don't care how cool some people think Guy Gardner is or Kyle Rayner or Jon Stewart. To me, it's Hal Jordan, and you go with Hal Jordan. So that's my personal opinion. A lot of people who are much smarter than me do think a Jon Stewart could work and could work quite well. And as far as your question goes, if they were to do that, then Idris Elba would be as good of a choice as anybody. Let's go on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Harvey Jacobs, right? Question, how involved, if at all, is Kevin Feige with the Marvel films produced by Sony and Fox? I don't think at all. I think there's probably some consulting here and there to make sure they don't break any of the rules that are set out in their licensing agreements and things like that. But I honestly don't think Kevin Feige has much say or any say in what Sony or Fox or what Universal, if they ever get a Namor movie going, has to do with their movie properties. Let's go here. Okay, Awesome writes, AMC Movie News, why can't actors from Marvel go into DC like Jamie Alexander from Sif to Wonder Woman, and can RDJ become Flash while he is Iron Man? Absolutely they can. They absolutely can. I mean, just look at Idris Elba. He's played comic book characters from Ghost Rider, which was not, remember, it may be a Marvel comic book, but at the time, Ghost Rider belonged to Sony. So you had Idris Elba was in Ghost Rider 2, and he was Heimdall in the Marvel Universe. Actually, in a not so long ago, we did on an AMC Movie Talk, we listed about 15 actors who have been in comic book movies for different companies. So it's really not that hard of a thing. I mean, look, Ryan Reynolds was Green Lantern, a DC movie, and he was Deadpool, or at least a bad version of Deadpool, but he was Deadpool in the Wolverine movie. So absolutely, actors can go back and forth. Can RDJ be Flash? That I don't think that would be good casting, but could Robert Downey Jr. be Flash if he wanted to? Absolutely, he could. If DC wanted to use him, but I don't think they would. I don't think they'd want to get Iron Man to be their Flash. But there's absolutely nothing that says, unless it's in a specific actor's contract, but if DC wanted Jamie Alexander as Wonder Woman, there's nothing stopping them from having Jamie Alexander as Wonder Woman. If they want, if DC wants Chris Evans as Batman, there's nothing stopping them from using Chris Evans as Batman if Chris Evans wants to do it. But it kind of makes sense why a studio wouldn't do that, because you don't want to create a lot of confusion. And what DC doesn't want to do, DC doesn't want to promote Marvel films. And essentially, if you get Robert Downey Jr. as the Flash, you're making Robert Downey Jr. more popular. You're just promoting the next time Robert Downey Jr. appears as Iron Man. So I don't think they want to do that, but there's nothing stopping them from doing things like that. All right, let's go back here. Sorry, Theo19, you've already asked your question. Let's see. Captain Atlantean writes, I love the avatar there, by the way. Where does the failure of Jack Ryan leave Chris Pine's career as a leading man away from Star Trek? You know, that's a really good question. I think the studio obviously wanted much better things for the Jack Ryan film. They thought they had a big potential new franchise, or at least the rebooting of a franchise. And it's interesting because there is this other small movie coming out that Joe Carnahan did called Driver, I believe. That's supposed to be coming out. And Universal had the rights to it. Still do. And it was supposed to get released in like 2 months or next month. I can't remember all the details off the top of my head, but the basic gist is they had this movie and Chris Pine was in it. And I think Universal was kind of, it's a small film, but Chris Pine's name was in it, so they kind of thought maybe it would have some box office legs. And then the failure of Jack Ryan happened. And I don't think it's a coincidence that very closely after the Jack Ryan film kind of failed, financially at any rate, that Universal decided we're not releasing this film anymore, this Driver movie that Chris Pine is in. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the two are connected. I do think this will have an effect on what he does in the future. But remember, effects can be short term. I think right now studios will be hesitant to use Chris Pine in a lead role. But all that needs to be fixed is for the next Star Trek film to be a big mega hit. If the next Star Trek film comes out and everybody loves it and it's a big mega hit, then Chris Pine's fine again. He'll get offered big lead roles and things like that. So we just have to see how Star Trek turns out. Do I believe the Jack Ryan thing caused a bump in the road for Chris Pine's career? Yes. It did. But that bump can be easily overcome with a mega hit. And we know Star Trek 3 is coming. And so all they need to do is to have that do well, and he'll be fine again. All right. Next question. Sorry, guys. The more I talk, the more I start to cough. Next question comes from Ishmael Musa, who writes, question, hey, John and crew, do you think Tarantino would be a good match for, I lost again, for writer-director for a Deadpool movie? Love the show. No, I've answered that question before. I don't think he'd be a good match. Tarantino is a genius. He's awesome. He's fantastic. But I don't see that as a good fit for him, personally. Next question comes from Sammy, who writes, what comic book movie do you think will make the most money? The Amazing Spider-Man 2, X-Men Days of Future Past, Captain America 2, or Guardians of the Galaxy? To me, the answer to this is easy and obvious. Spider-Man 2 is going to make the most money out of those. I think they're all going to make money, but I think Spider-Man 2 is going to be the most financially successful out of all of them. Next one. Already answered that question. Skip that one. Did you think that The Amazing Spider-Man could be better than the Avengers? No. I thought the new Spider-Man looked really good. I like Mark Webb as a director. I was really excited about Andrew Garfield being the new Spider-Man when the first one came out. But I never thought for a second it could be better than the Avengers. Never. And that's not a big slam, because to me, in my opinion, the Avengers is the best comic book movie ever made. Better than The Dark Knight, better than everything. Better than X-Men 2, better than Spider-Man 2. So did I think that the first Amazing Spider-Man could be better than the... No, I never thought that. Never did. Could an Amazing Spider-Man eventually, like in number 2 or number 3 or number 4, could one come out that's eventually better than the Avengers? It's possible, but I never thought for a second that the first one would be. Let's see here. Daniel Salgado writes, hey, John, are there any movies that are considered classics by many people that you haven't seen? Off the top of my head, I can't think of any of the top. I'm sure there are, because there are a lot of movies out there. So I'm sure there are. I can't think of what they would be off the top of my head. I'm sure the answer to your question is absolutely yes. I just don't know what they are off the top of my head. Maybe if I sat down for a day, I could figure them out. But I'm just going to go out on a limb and say yes. There are movies that are considered classics by many people that I have not seen. I can't name them right now, but I'm sure that the answer is yes. Let's go on to John Stoltler, who writes, do you think actors who do their own stunts are taking away jobs from stuntmen? I'm going to say something that's not going to be very popular, but it's not a stuntman's job. That's like saying if I decide to cook my own dinner tonight, I'm taking a job away from a caterer. That's a ridiculous notion. Caterers are there for when you need them. All right. And they're great. They're awesome. Stuntmen and stunt people and stunt women are awesome and necessary and needed and a part of the lifeblood of what is Hollywood. But they are there for when you need them. And if there are stunts that an actor can do, look, it's always better to use the actor, because then it's more real. It's all that kind of stuff. But sometimes there are stunts that an actor should not be doing, because it's either a stunt that requires a lot of training or whatever, and it's just better to get a stunt person to do it. But a lot of times, if you have an actor who's totally capable and it's a stunt that doesn't require a lot, and the actor is totally capable of doing it on their own and they want to do it on their own, then no, that's not taking a job away from a stunt person, because the very nature of the stuntman industry is they are there for when you need them. When I decide to vacuum my own living room later, am I taking a job away from a professional house cleaner? No, the professional house cleaning service, and thank God they're there, but they are there for when you require them. And I believe the same thing is true of stuntman. It's not a stuntman's inherent right to, hey, if this scene requires Jim Carrey to fall down, it is my right that I should be the one to do it. No, stunt people are there for when they're required. And thank God they're there, because they are required a lot. But no, I'll never believe for a second that if an actor decides to do their own stunt in a particular scene or whatever, and it's safe and it's deemed to be safe and they're capable of doing it and they want to do it, then no, they're not taking a job away from a stunt person. They're doing their own job. And if the filmmaker doesn't believe at that moment that we require a stunt person, then he's not taking away his job. It's just that simple. It would be different if there was a movie, let's say Iron Man, needed a stunt, and the filmmakers decided we need a stunt person to do it in an Iron Man film. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Chris Pine from Star Trek comes running and says, let me do the stunt. I'll do the stunt. Even though you've decided you need a stunt person, I'll do it. Then that would be taking their job away. But if the filmmakers never decide that in this scene we require a stunt person, then nobody's job is being taken away. So that's just the way I see it. I'm sure there are other points of view on that maybe I'm missing, but that's just the way my initial reaction to it. All right. Next question. Immortal Tony's asking, what are your expectations for Bond 24? My expectation is going to be awesome. Who should be the Bond girl? Don't care. Really don't care. Let's see. Shane Michael Condon writes, when Batman vs. Superman was announced over the summer, The Flash was also announced for 2016. Why isn't this in talks now? Just the show. That's a big misunderstanding. Let me read this question again from Shane. When Batman vs. Superman was announced over the summer, The Flash show was also announced for 2016. No, it was not. A Flash movie was never announced. Ever. Let me be clear about this. This is another one of those situations where some website claimed something, but it never came from the studio. Remember how I was harping on that earlier in the show? That, look, just because some website makes a claim, it ain't confirmed. Nothing is confirmed until you hear it from the studio. And some website, I think the day before they officially announced at Comic-Con that Batman vs. Superman was coming, some website, granted a pretty credible website, ran the story that they're going to do Batman film, Batman is going to be in the next Superman film, and a Flash movie's coming in 2016. The studio never said that. Ever. It was some website making a claim, and then a whole bunch of other websites ran it as a Flash movie is coming in 2016, and confirmed Flash movie coming. It was never announced. Never was it confirmed. Never did a studio person say we're doing a Flash movie. It was a website making a claim. And that's why we as film fans have to keep ourselves, we have to use critical thinking. We have to keep ourselves educated about this because websites will run any crap today at all. I'll be honest with you. I'm a huge lover of the online movie sphere. I've been the biggest defender of the online movie sphere for 10 years. I love it. I read more blogs, film blogs, than I can shake a stick at. But I'm telling you, the biggest poison in the online movie sphere right now is a lack. And I don't expect blogs to be journalists, but I expect them to be responsible. And the amount of irresponsibility that, to me, it just feels like a lot of websites, there are a lot of websites that do it right. So I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. Many great movie websites do it right. But there are a lot of websites out there that just don't care if they're misleading their readers or not. They don't care. All they care about is, does this look like a good headline and will you click it? That's all they care about. They don't care about, they never once stop and think, maybe we're misleading our readers or whatever. Just tell people. Instead, they run with these ridiculous headlines and then say in their articles, yep, there's a Flash movie coming, everybody. Get excited. Who do you want to see play the Flash now? And blah, 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 blah. When that was never the case. And it drives me nuts that it happened. So to answer your question, why isn't anybody talking about the 2016 Flash film that they announced? Because it was never announced. I just want to get that out of the way. All right. Sorry, I get all hot under the collar when I talk about that issue because I care about the online movie sphere so much that it just really bothers me that I'm seeing this problem running rampant in it right now. I'll take two more and then we got to call it a day. We're getting close to an hour. I'm going to skip over Avengers questions. I'm going to skip over comic book questions. How's that for right now? The last two questions are going to be non-comic book questions. Bernardo Lendor writes, why don't they align actor and actress names with their photos in the film posters? It's not important. Because, look, there's a logic and a reason why you put certain actors' names in a certain order. But then I think the artistic design of the poster should not be beholden to the order in which the studio filmmakers decide names should appear. If the artist believes this character should be here, and this character should be here, and this character should be here, then let the artist make their poster and don't worry about the fact of what order their names are up here. So I think when all other things are equal, if you can make a poster designed in such a way that the designer likes it and it can align with the names of the actors on the top, that's great. But I don't think it's important. I think if you have Ryan Reynolds here and Emily Van Camp in a movie together here, I don't think it's going to throw audience members off to see Ryan Reynolds or Emily Van Camp's name up here above Ryan Reynolds. They're not going to go, wait a minute, that dude who looks just like Ryan Reynolds is actually Emily Van Camp. I don't think a lot of people are going to lose any sleep over that. So I really don't think it's an important thing. Next question comes to us from skipping comic book questions. Oh, here's an interesting one. What are your top 4 favorite films of all time? From Joshua Katz Curtis. Honestly, I don't like giving... I'll tell people what's my top 10, but I don't like putting things in order. Because from year to year, my number 3 could become my number 4. My number 5 could become my number 3. So I don't like to give an order. I always say this. I'll tell people my top 10, but I say with the disclaimer that Star Wars, which is the embodiment of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, Star Wars is my number 1 of all time. After that, you got films like Lawrence of Arabia, Shawshank Redemption, Spartacus, Godfather, Godfather Part 2, The Lord of the Rings, and so forth and so on. So I got a big long list, but I don't like giving things numerically. But there, I just listed off a bunch of them. All those ones I just listed are in my top 10. The original Highlander is in my top 10 as well. So, but I don't like giving things number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So there you go. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for me. We've gone over an hour. Thanks a lot for joining me today. Listen, I want to remind you, lots of great films playing in AMC theaters right now. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. And listen, if you haven't done so already, take a second and click on that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. I think we just crossed 140,000 subscribers. Thanks so much for your help and support. So make sure you click on that. And don't forget, listen, I want to let you guys know, for the weekend, for the holiday coming up, there is not going to be an AMC movie talk tomorrow. Okay, so just so you know, let other people know who ask about it, that you talk to in chat boards, whatever. No AMC movie talk tomorrow because we're all taking the day off because it's the holiday, so we're going to take the day off too. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. My name is John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.